it open though.
Yes. That's my plan. I'm going to pause the recording there outside of your school. So I think David Boone is going to talk a little bit about how to get in touch with Pitt. Jan Waldeck's going to talk a little bit about how she connects her students with people outside of her school. Chuck Vukotic is going to talk a little bit about CMU. We're going to talk a little bit about Duquesne. Anyone else who has any connections within the community, please feel free to chime in. I don't think we have David back yet. He's probably still teaching. So I think I'll start with you, Jan, if you don't mind, talking
Sure.
about how you get your students connected with local universities and professionals.
The method I'm using is that I let students look through the web pages of companies and universities in our area. I mean, first it was just universities, but then one of my students this year pointed out that companies might be more able to take a kid during the pandemic than a university lab because the university labs are shut down. And then if I tell them to pick out like their top 3, let's say they're interested in biology, and I'll say, well, what about biology are you excited about? And they'll look through and say, well, I really like cell biology. And then I'll say, well, let's look at who does cell biology. And, I mean, if they're picking out their own mentor, and then I say, who would be your first choice and who would be your second choice? Because chances are you're going to get the answer no multiple times. And when you go to college and you try to get into labs, you're going to go through this whole process, sometimes more than a dozen times to get into a lab. So I have them, I walk them through papers. We read papers together that the PI has written. And then together we write a letter. I have the student write the first draft and we craft a letter to that particular mentor. And we send it. But there are a lot of hurdles. The first hurdle is that everyone will say no because there are laws that say I can't work with a mentor or with a minor. But I have worked with my school to get the school to sign off on liability. So the Pittsburgh Public Schools I have a document that says that they assume liability for these students. With the University of Pittsburgh, I also crafted with a lawyer a contract that allows students from Pittsburgh Public Schools to work under the direction of a professor in arts and sciences or in engineering. And but I use the same contract if I work with a professor from Carnegie Mellon. And so that's what I do. I don't know. Carnegie Mellon, more likely the professors will say they're not allowed because of rules and laws, but it turns out that's not true. They're using that, I don't know, maybe they don't want to work with the kid. But it turns out that the Carnegie Mellon hires a lot of high school kids to work on projects all the time. If you go into the computer science building, there are high school kids that are interns, that are paid interns all over the building. So Carnegie Mellon does allow high school students on campus. You just gotta be a little more persistent and, how can we work this out? And the school will assume liability, or does your department have a summer program that we could link with and that would cover the liability that you're worried about? But that's how I look for a mentor. And even if I'm looking for a mentor in the community, I had a wonderful guy. He retired and he just lives in Squirrel Hill, and he was an expert on the topic one of my students wanted to pursue. And he was 85, and he was so thrilled that he got to work with somebody like every Friday they met. I still require from him the 3 clearances, and I keep the clearances in a folder on my computer. And you have to verify the clearances every semester for anybody who works with your student. Does that get the conversation started a little bit?
I think so. Thank you.
But I do agree with David Boone in that there's got to be a lot of discussion. I have a private conversation with the mentor because to look for red flags, because some mentors are going to think that these kids are going to come in and they're going to work like grad students, and they're not. They're high school students, and high school students can do a lot of crazy things. And like disappear for a month for soccer, or decide that, oh no, I'm not interested in physics. I really am interested in basket weaving, and totally, like, after you put all that effort in. So I have to protect both sides of the doorway. So in a sense, I am a gatekeeper. I have a long conversation with the mentor about what the expectations are, and that these are children, and what I would expect for them to be doing in terms of the class, so that these expectations are clear. And we work out a way for us to communicate without taking up the mentor's time. I also have a long conversation with the student and with the parent to, again, say, like, if you're going to work in this lab, this is what you're going to be expected of you. And as David pointed out, during the school year is insane. So I had a student a couple of years ago, he really wanted to do this research project, but his whole life, when he was a senior, he wanted to be the star of the school musical. And it just comes down to, you can't do everything. And he surprised everyone at the school. He dropped out of the tryouts for the musical, and because the professor said, if you have C. elegans, I'm not asking my grad students to harvest them for you. If you have an experiment, that's your experiment. And this student is now at Penn State, and he's doing research, and he's getting a science degree. But he totally sacrificed being in the school musical, which is something that I know he wanted to do for many, many years. So I try to control both sides of the communication and make sure that nobody gets burned, the professor's time, or that the student realizes what they're getting into also.
Thank you. Mark, would you like to talk about how you connect your students with outside mentors? I know you have some good connections with local universities. You are muted right now, Mark.
It's rather informal, to be honest.
We still can't hear you.
Oops, turn up a little bit. Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It's rather informal. I have just a number of resources, both at Pitt and CMU, maybe a couple of Chatham, Duquesne hospitals settings.
Mark, you're kind of low. I don't know if everybody's getting you normal volume or not, but I'm getting you very, very low.
Sorry, I hope this is better.
So much.
Yeah, I was in an
Yes, sir.
room. I just rocked my granddaughter to bed. Sorry. As I was saying, I have just a number of informal connections at CMU, Pitt, Duquesne, etc. And so it's kind of hit or miss, to be honest. But that avenue is drying up an awful lot just because of all the rules now, especially with clearances and things. And of course, our COVID world, this is all going to change. So I don't have a whole lot of advice except to say that I think we need to establish a central repository for people, who are interested. Maybe we could reach out, find out who at Pitt, who at CMU, Duquesne, et cetera, is able and willing to support a student in there and go from there, because my avenue isn't working that well anymore.
All right, David, would you like to help us out with some connections to Pitt next?
Sure. Do you mind if I share my screen again? I
Please
just have
do.
a few slides. Let's see. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is just my program, and I'm not doing this as like for promotion as much as this is a main way to connect with mentors in the Pittsburgh region. We work with, let me see where, we work with about 70, well, through my high school and undergraduate programs, I work with about 100 faculty members a year at Pitt. So there are only so many mentors who are do this. And I think it goes back to Jan's point. I also try really hard to navigate that relationship and to protect students and to protect mentors so that the group of 100 mentors I have doesn't shrink down to 50 mentors over a couple of years from getting burned, right? So I try really hard to do that. So I am going to mention specifically a few programs at Pitt. I think Jan has already mentioned them as well. And we heard from Becky earlier, I don't know if she's back on the call, who helps to run the Gene team. But through these programs is a way for students to meet potential mentors as well. So not only are they great programs, but they're a way to meet faculty, they're to make connections at the university, or for all of you as teachers, to get to know, like Jan said, Jan is great at building relationships and getting to know program directors. You get to know program directors, then you get to know faculty indirectly. So there are some really good ones for students to try. I'm going to talk about Hillman Academy in like 5 minutes and just tell you about it. Gene Team, which is fantastic. It's only open to students from Pittsburgh Public Schools, though, or schools like Propel, others sort of smaller, private, under-resourced schools as well. Camp IOE, that's available to everyone. Investing Now, which is in our engineering department, that does a really, really nice job. Tech Leadership Initiative, which is in computer science. So the other thing, again, we're spanning the School of Medicine, School of Arts and Sciences, engineering, computer sciences. McGee has their own research program, the McGee Women's Research Institute. It's small. It varies from like 5 to 10 to 12 students a year. Children's Hospital at Rangos they've had an undergraduate program from a long time, and they're now trying to get a high school program off the ground too. So there are people in all of the different schools and different places that are willing to do this. And the reason why most students come through these programs is for a lot of those liability reasons, a lot of kind of the bureaucracy of getting students into Pitt. It's much easier if you have a point person or you have an organization who is taking control of these things. So that is one of the best ways to connect with mentors at Pitt that I know of, is to try to get involved or try to get your students involved in programs that already exist. The other nice thing, if you're coming through a program and you get to know those people, those are the mentors that are willing to work with high school students as well, a lot of times. So, they're drawn to these programs. The students, this is a pathway for the students to get there. So that's fantastic. If you want to know any more about any of these programs, I'm happy to make personal connections too. I'll put my email address in the chat after I'm done talking. Feel free to reach out to me. I can make personal connections to all of these directors of programs too. They're all people that I now work with. Okay. So what is the Hillman Academy? I talked a little bit about kind of our pedagogy and how we foster our local learning environment, but our program in general, it's 8 weeks in the summer, it's full-time, and our goal is to provide mentorship and authentic research. So the students do the research that faculty members, graduate students, postdocs are already doing. So they're not, again, and this is different than I know Mark and Jan's program to some extent, they're not coming up with the projects. They're getting pushed into science research that's pushing the edge of knowledge, right? They're getting a true, authentic research experience, but not for research design. So that's the one thing that is lacking. So we want to provide that and some of the career preparatory experiences that I already mentioned to a diverse group of motivated high school students. So this is really important to us. we want to increase not only the quality and quantity of students who are prepared for research, but also the diversity, which is a huge problem in our country, a huge problem in our city. And so we focus, at least 50% of our students come from underrepresented backgrounds, as we're trying to open up access to this as well. Okay, so 90% of their time, just so you get a little bit more of a feel, I know we had a question about timing before, 90% of their time in the summer is spent doing research. They're in the labs, they're pipetting. If they're in a life science, we do have about a third of our program is computational in nature. So they'll be sitting in classrooms, in cubicles, and mostly in classrooms, all together working on different projects. People doing kind of more of the biology side of it will be in research labs working one-on-one. We give them a tiered mentoring team. So the faculty and staff sometimes directly mentor the student, but oftentimes faculty are mentoring the postdocs, the graduate students, who are then working directly with our high school students. Also, the summer undergraduate program that I have, I try to give them some leadership skills as well by pairing them with a handful of students. So we have a tiered mentoring program doing authentic research. And we do academic development. This is what I talked about earlier today, the other things that we do, but it's all centered on their hands-on research, right? That's the focus. We reiterate that 1,000 times to them. You doing your research is the most important thing you can do. These other things are to try to help you and supplement that. All the students give final talks. Again, because we're a pretty big program with over 70 students in high school and at least 5 or 4 of undergrads, we have about 80 presentations at the end of the summer that all happen on one day. We have our own giant poster session where we take over the entire first floor of the Cancer Center, the Hillman Cancer Center, have our own poster presentations. We have tons of faculty, clinicians, students to come to these, teachers as well, always welcome. We always invite everyone who recommends our students. We don't often see a ton of them come, but that's the way we try to reach some of the teachers who we don't know as well. This actually, for anyone who's interested, we did have a small virtual program this year that's ongoing now. That's where I was for the last hour. It's all computational research and engineering projects. This Friday from 9 a.m. to about 4 p.m., we're gonna have 18 to 20 talks. So you guys are all more than welcome, and I'm happy to share that information too. If you just wanna see the type of research a student can do, even under the worst of circumstances, which was this year, the students are really remarkable once you allow them to do something they're really interested into. Our students do go to science fairs. They are qualifying for ISEF. This is, again, not the goal. I know we want to improve the research that's happening in Pittsburgh, but the act of them celebrating the science they do and getting practice and communicating is why I encourage science fairs. Winning anything or qualifying for anything is just kind of icing on the cake for students, but not our goal. Although we've been pretty successful over the last few years. We don't, I guess I didn't mention this, we don't only work from students from Pittsburgh as well. It is a national program, although it's probably 80 to 90% of our students are from Pittsburgh or Allegheny County. We do have students who have been from probably 40 different states and different territories too over this is our 12th year of doing this program. So we have ISEF qualifiers not only in Pittsburgh, but we have ISEF qualifiers from Hawaii and Detroit and other places in any given year. It's fun to judge because then I can go and it's like a little mini reunion as I meet some of our students who have gone off. Our program's completely free. So any of your students who are interested can apply to our program. It does not cost anything. We don't provide transportation to campus. That would be difficult. But once they're there, we get people around. We actually charter a bus for the entire summer to move people between campus locations. But if a student can't participate because they can't get there, we will find a way to make sure that we can get them bus passes or a way to get there. We have residential housing, but that's not the requirement. It's a very, very small group of students. So of our 70, usually 8 to 10 people live on campus. That again, it costs us money. It's as cost. If it's a student from underrepresented backgrounds, we pay for that. So it costs absolutely nothing for them. But for other students from who have the means, we'll ask for them to pay those fees so it doesn't hit our program fee. Okay, so our commitment to diversity and inclusion, this has increased over the years. We are now guaranteed that at least 50% of our students are coming from underrepresented groups based on race and ethnicity, students with disabilities. So we also work with the Western Pennsylvania School for the Deaf, individuals who come from low income houses, or if they're from a high school in a rural or urban setting that maybe doesn't have all of the resources that other schools do. Like if schools don't have AP science classes. I know my school didn't have AP science classes and still doesn't, or actually maybe they do now. The last time I talked to the principal 2 years ago, they still didn't. So these types of places exist, and we want to try to make sure that science is inclusive and available to everyone. Same thing, first-time parents with first-time, students who are first-time college going to. Our students from underrepresented backgrounds, we pay a stipend to, so not only is the program free, we'll pay them $2,400, give free meals when they're on campus, free housing if they need it, free buses. We have laptops that we now lend out. We'll provide internet access if we need to as well. And we try to stay connected with these students forever if they would have us. A new program that we launched just last year, just in September, so not the best time to launch a new program, but it's to guarantee 2 consecutive years of research. So we've done this informally for a lot of students where they do research 1 year and they want to come back. They want to do it in the same lab. Sometimes the way our program works, we have 6 different sites with different types of research. So cancer biology research, specifically women's cancer research, computational biology, informatics, machine learning, computer science research, tumor immunology is one specific site. So we have different types of research, some types of engineering, and the students get to see all of the different types of research that's going on. So sometimes they'll be like, I didn't really like what I did, but that project looked really cool. I want to work for someone else. So we've now formalized this for some of our underrepresented students that if they get in one time, they're guaranteed a second summer of research. And then we will work with them during the year to try to enter science fairs, do those types of things too. And we pay those students, if they do 2 complete years with us, we'll pay them $7,200 total. So again, we're trying to also replace income for students over the summer, which is a struggle that we've learned about, especially this year as everything's gone virtual. Students are trying to do too many things or have too many responsibilities already at home. So this is really critical for that part. Oh, so there's one of my email addresses. You can see it now. I'll put it in the chat though later. Our applications, if your students are interested, are generally due at the end of November or sometime in December. It's all electronic. We have a website. If you want to learn more about it, always reach out to me. I'm happy. I go to 20, 30, 40 schools a year to talk about the program or bring small little science activities. So I'm happy to do those types of things too. Again, with that new grant, that's given us money to have dedicated equipment. So if your school doesn't have PCR machines, I have a PCR machine now, I will bring it to you. If you need reagents to do CRISPR and you want to teach your students how to do CRISPR in some class, I will pay for that. I will bring it to you and you can do it too. So we have those capabilities. So please use me as a resource if you can. So that's, again, our program and one path in. And again, I mention it because it's a lot of students. That program's 75 students. Undergraduate programs I run, again, get up to 25 or 30 others. That's a lot of faculty. And so this is one of the reasons why it might be hard sometimes to find faculty because they're already working with someone, especially in the summer. If you have to reach out otherwise, I think Jan talked about this already, personal connection to mentors goes a long way. So once you have a student in a lab, I think then you can build that bond if you really work on it like Jan does, so that you can get students in that lab in the future too. Otherwise, you're going to be starting with cold emailing. And that works some as long as you have a lot of grit and persistence, because it's going to fall on deaf ears to a lot of places. And I'm going to talk a bit about why in a minute. But my advice when you do these types of cold emailings is, one, I really like it when a student does it. if they're legally allowed to from the school that they're coming from. It means more to me when a student does it than a parent or a teacher. But it needs to be tailored to whoever they're writing it to. So they need to have figured out what they're interested in, at least to some bit, read a paper, be able to talk about why they want to work with that specific person. That goes so much further than saying, hey, I just want to do research and I'm looking for something. That will generally be ignored. But if you can inflate someone's ego enough, they might be willing to work with you. So this is good. Talk to them about in their email. Another resource that I think goes overlooked sometimes is reaching out to the trainees. So the graduate students and postdocs oftentimes are more interested and have more time to do this type of training than the faculty members themselves. And they might be a gateway into a faculty member's lab where a faculty member would normally say no. So on most department pages, they'll list faculty members. A lot of faculty have websites directly to their labs, and they might list trainees. So in addition to looking for a faculty member, again, and this is from my experience of working at the university when I'm looking for mentors, sometimes I do it through the graduate students. I have connections with the Graduate Student Association, the Postdoctoral Student Association, and that has helped certainly get into more labs too. So don't forget about the trainees. The trainees are going to be who's working with the students anyways. It's not going to be the faculty in most situations. Now, some of the logistics, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, and the challenges can be overcome. I know Jan talked about having something with arts and sciences and with engineering. There's something in the School of Medicine and all of this health sciences as well. There's something called the Health Science Research Training Program. This is Katie Rossi is the person who runs this. It's really just an umbrella blanket program because Pitt has a policy that you can't work with minors unless they're part of a program. So it's an absolute requirement that a lot of people don't know. A student cannot work with a mentor if they're not part of a program. But to get around that, there is this mostly, it's not, I shouldn't say it's like an empty shell of a program, but the main point of this program is to be a program so students can do research with mentors. So if you make those individual connections to legally have someone in Pitt and be above board, you reach out to Katie Rossi, and she has all of the paperwork that General Counsel at the University of Pittsburgh has navigated in order to legally have a student on board. So that's always important and something that's not always known. So there is a way to do it, even though, and this is where I bring this up, policies are generally misunderstood at this university. You might reach out to certain faculty and they'll come back and say, we're not allowed to do this. Or you'll reach out to an administrator and they'll say, Pitt does not allow high school students on campus. None of those things are true, but that is a general misconception. And it's because the policies are misunderstood. The other thing will happen is people will just say, yeah, come and do nothing. And that's also not the proper way to do it and not the way Pitt wants to do it. So again, as you're trying to build relationships, I think it's probably always good to do things above board when possible. And it will get around some really important things like making sure the mentors have clearances. So that's an absolute requirement of anyone to work with a minor at the University of Pittsburgh, or I think across all of the state, right? It's now absolutely required to have clearances to work with kids in any capacity. But as faculty, we do not have to have them. We work with undergrads who are not minors. And if there are minors in our classes, those are exceptions. So there is no policy by the administration that faculty members have to have clearances. So that's important to realize. However, there is if they work with a minor. So any faculty member who works through my program, I'm responsible as the program director of making sure that they have their clearances, not the university. It falls on the program directors, then going through HR and up. So again, this is why going above board is really important. You want to make sure all those policies are in place, that you're not putting the students in a bad situation, and that the mentors are protected too, that they're doing things the correct way and don't get beat up about something for not doing it the right way when they find out. Okay, so here are some other reasons why, and maybe Mark, this could be some of why it's hard for the personal relationships to even work, is there are some very I don't know how to call them, but there are logistical and administrative challenges for faculty to mentor high school students at the University of Pittsburgh. So I wanted you to know what you're fighting against. One is time, right? So, and I mean this in a lot of different ways. I said it before. Oh, is there a question? No, okay. The amount of time a student can give is important to a mentor, because you want to make sure that if you're giving of your time, it's valuable, and it's valuable to the student. So that time is very important. Time is also very important for graduate students. They need to finish, they need to move on. As soon as a faculty member starts, a clock starts where you only have a certain amount of time to get the next promotion, to get tenure, or you're done. You don't have a job. And so these are working against anyone who's trying to get a student to be placed in the lab. Because, at least in the School of Medicine at Pitt, your tenure, promotions, retainment at Pitt is not valued at all for mentoring and training high school students. It's not mentioned. You cannot mention it. So because of that, you're fighting against it. And I can tell you, I've had many, many people who were discouraged from working with high school students or undergraduates because of this. Because you only have a certain amount of time. If you don't have that grant, you don't have your several papers a year, you're gonna not have a job. And so even some very generous chairs of departments, deans of schools, will actively discourage participation if someone is floundering, or I shouldn't even say floundering, if they're not meeting the metrics that are going to be required to get tenure. So that is a big, big problem. We're trying to change this. There is a new dean of the medical school here. We are trying actively, a group of us are trying to change this policy. So I'm hoping that we'll make some headway and maybe open up access to more people to get involved. We're trying to get it actually counted as a positive thing, especially when working with students from underrepresented groups, of being really important for their promotion and tenure, but that's still to be determined. So it's really
David,
hard. Yeah, go ahead.
David, just to be fair to Pitt and to the other university, well, Pitt especially, you've been a little hard. You know, generally doing good works, you know, doesn't get you anything anywhere.
That's true.
That's in general. I mean, in
Absolutely.
terms of tenure and promotions, and you know,
Yep.
in fact, yeah. So let's just leave it at that. I think you've been a little hard on your own school, there, but
I'm
I
not
think
trying to
that's
be. I think it's true of
that's-
every school. I don't think
that's
it's
the way
Pitt.
the world works.
Yeah.
You can do really good things. You know, nice people, good people don't always get rewarded. Sometimes they get punished for being good.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'm just putting it here so that you realize why you have to email 30 people to get one to respond.
Yeah.
This is some of the things you're dealing with. And it's definitely not just Pitt. This is, I'm involved in these. We have different networks of programs similar to mine, and every university struggles with this. It's not just Pitt, certainly. There might be some that are slightly better. Liberal arts schools are generally a little better than Research One universities. But again, you have to realize, at the School of Medicine as a faculty member, if I don't have enough grants to pay for all of my research plus 70% of my salary, I no longer have a job, ever, and stop, right? So that's what you're required to do. If you're part of the undergraduate campus, the requirements are slightly different, but that's schools of medicine, where a lot of high school research takes place in schools of medicine, right? So I'm not trying to put Pitt down at all. They give me an opportunity to do this. I think they're turning a page and are pretty good. I mean, again, I know of at least 100 students every year who are doing it. There are other programs that are, there are hundreds and hundreds of students doing internships at Pitt. So even despite all of this, there are lots of really good people who will do it. But just know, this is some things that, again, when I talk to people like, I just don't understand why Pitt doesn't do more of the community. It's not always the faculty members, so don't hate the faculty members all the time. We're fighting against a lot of things too. Is kind of my point. Just keep going and you will find someone, though. And that's where, again, building relationships is so important, because the more they know you, the more they're going to trust that the students you send them are going to have proper expectations, are going to be qualified, are going to be able to do the work, are going to do the work. So that's, building relationships is everything. And that's it.
I could sum up a little bit of David's perspective. There's a lot of hurdles to get over.
Yeah.
You just got to be insanely, almost insanely optimistic about finding creative ways to get around or over the hurdles. I mean, and I think that all the people here, I can't see all of you, but I am assuming we're all teachers and we put kids first. And I was just curious if this meeting could possibly lead to an establishment of a resource center for teachers at the Science Center. And possibly, I mean, I'm just talking off the top of my head, but with a governing board that would include teachers, a community leader, a university person, and a program director. Because I really think that if we have a governing board that could respond to, almost like an ombudsman, but oh, here's a creative way to answer this question, problem that a teacher is having. If somebody's feeling really frustrated and alone in their school, we could like field it and say, here's a creative way to try to fix or help your student, or I found this way to try to help them. I mean, I don't know if anyone's interested, but I think a resource center would be really fun, and we could even tailor it sort of like the SSP, how they have their annual National Research Teachers Conference. We could have, say, an annual Pittsburgh Region Teachers Conference, and even do it over Zoom. We'll have it, Ilya, who's in attendance, and I can see his face, and we just went to a physics teachers conference, which was so cool. They had, everybody had to present something, and they had what's called what was it called, Ilya?
The breakout room?
The breakout rooms and the Padlets.
Oh,
and
the Padlet, yeah.
The Padlets, you had to write what you were going to talk about, and they had the breakout rooms, like everyone's going to go over here and solve this problem, and everyone's going to go over here and talk about this. And it was like, whoever was in charge of those breakout rooms, man, they had us going all over the screen. And, but it was, I felt energized at the end. Did you? Yeah?
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, it was so fun, and I'm just wondering if we can get some optimism and some community, you know, whatever this is, together about working with the research kids. Any other anybody else out there?
Yeah, somebody give a thumbs up if they're happy about this idea.
Or even turn on your video. We can see who you are.
Well, I think one of the answers, the answer to your question, Jan, is, well, maybe. I think it's you know, we are in the process of trying to decide what it is we can do to improve the quality and the environment of student research in Western Pennsylvania. And so this is certainly something that we want to try to do. COVID's made this a little more complicated. You know, if this was normal times, I might have a more definitive answer, but I think, you know, ultimately that's the direction we're heading. Now, you know, I guess if I had a whole bunch of money, I could say, yeah, we're going to do it and I'm going to fund it. Given that might not happen, you know, we need to move forward, you know, to get through COVID. But I think this is certainly within the realm of plans for the future, and not the distant future, but the near future. I don't know if you want to say anything, Nikki, or not. You don't have to. I'm a board member. I'm a board member of the Carnegie Science Center. I can say what I want to say. So yeah, Janet, we're going to do something. I'm not sure when, and I'm not sure what, but we're going to do something. In fact, I'm making notes here about various things because part of this is a learning process for me as to, again, the question is, how do we improve in the environment and the quality of student research? And we're still looking for those answers. But I think that this idea of having some sort of permanent advisory group or some kind of set of programs or something, or doing, I mean, this is the first one, you know, this is the first teacher conference. So, and this is not going to be the last. So in some sense, the answer to your question is yes. This is not going to be the last Western Pennsylvania teacher conference ever. In fact, hopefully, if we do this again, let's just say next year we're going to do it. You know, we have like a boatload of people who are, you know, like just swarming, you know, swarming all over Zoom or swarming all over the Science Center, hopefully in person, to do this kind of thing. So yes, that's the answer to your question. It's a matter of when, and also kind of how, if we need some funding, how we fund it. But there's some, I think, some possibilities with that as well. That's not crazy talk.
We have a couple of positive comments in the chat box as well. People who think this is a good idea. If you want to pop over there and read comments. We also had a question for Dr. Boone about the Hillman Academy in the chat box.
Yeah, so I see this, and it's a good question, and I don't have a solid answer yet because it all depends on what 2021 looks like. We are going to open our applications this year with the hope that we'll be in person next year. But if we're not, we will still be a much smaller program, because to do true, authentic research that we want students to be engaged with, there's only so much that can be done virtually. That's going to be this mutual benefit, both students and mentors. And so it will probably be computational. Again, this year we have about 20 students. So we're going to open up applications with the hope that this pandemic subsides and that we're able to be back in person next summer. So the students who applied last year, we will hold their application. If they want to reapply, they don't need to redo it. They will be able to, but we will look at all of those and are happy to do so. But it is unfortunate. You know, we do get hundreds of applications, and this has dramatically reduced the size and scope of our program. So we're hoping to be up and running fully next year. And I see that, is it Ia? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. One of your PhD students.
Ilya.
Ilya, perfect. Yeah, PhD students, in my view of now seeing this done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, PhD students and postdocs are the best mentors. They are far superior to faculty members in general. So if you can find them, you're going to be in good shape. Yeah. Okay.
I had another call. David, I want you to, if you want to finish, I did have some thoughts and comments which come from your discussion.
So that was it. If you have thoughts and comments, that was the end.
Well,
you know, it's
so
just the liability and other issues. But yeah.
Let's, you know, one, and this is for everybody. This is doable. I mean, the liability issues, like in some sense, the lawyers have already been placated. We've managed to get you got one student in, it's a model for more students. And it's not, in some sense, all that complicated. Perhaps we need to have the university, and I'll say universities, all having some mutual agreement as to what has to happen. But even if that doesn't, you know, this is doable. Pitt has a boatload of projects that accept high school students. I mean, we're talking about them today. You know, Hillman Academy and the things that Becky does. School of Engineering has some less formal things, but they take students. One of the things that strikes me is that we should try to collect information on all these projects. You know, Hillman Academy, David Boone, all these different resources can be codified. I'm interested in working on that and helping whoever. I may not be the person. David really seems to be the font of knowledge. Jan may have some knowledge, but we need, I would think it would be extremely valuable to teachers to be able to say, the University of Pittsburgh, this is all the program, this is what it looks like, you know, and maybe as an adjunct to that, this is the kind of things that are going to happen that you're going to have to do, and all kinds of other things. But to codify the programs at the University of Pittsburgh, to put them all in one place, I think would be, a great start. I've actually thought of, maybe at Pitt trying to get it organized centrally in some sense. I know the Senior Vice Chancellor for Research. I could probably get a meeting with him. I'm not sure that's useful though, getting those folks involved. But if we could identify all the people who are working locally, might be more useful. But it might be a thought, if you want to go to the chancellor's level and see if we get some, if that would be helpful. I'm not sure it is, but that's another thought. I mean, I think we need to think about what it is we want to do and what's useful. At Pre-Cef, there were 345 projects in the senior division. So we're maybe talking, let's say 400 students who would be interested in programs. It almost seems like you have more slots at Pitt already than that, but maybe not. But not all these kids. So I think within our current framework, we have enough resource and enough interest to accommodate everybody in Pre-Cef. And in some sense, no offense to everybody else, I'm only interested in Pre-Cef because that's my program. But we certainly have resources available for students to participate in universities, those that might want to do it. And I guess the last thing is David mentioned this. Faculty don't understand. Some of them. I don't know if there's a way to educate faculty or just to promote the idea with the faculty at Pitt, with everyone at Pitt, that and elsewhere for that matter, but to educate them and say, hey, there are these really cool high school kids who are going to be you someday, or maybe your graduate students or undergraduates at Pitt. We might be able to recruit some of them to come. They're bright, they're interested, they're fun. Again, it takes thinking about and then executing something to do. And that might be something that comes out of the research, the Senior Vice Chancellor for Research's office, just to get him to to do something with that. Maybe that's not the best way, but certainly those are possible approaches. Would be nice, if everybody understands what's available, faculty understand what they can do, faculty gets sold on, hey, these kids are really cool, because they are. This is fun. Something to keep your grad students, make them happy. Because we do get a lot of grad students, a lot of people from Pitt come and judge. Grad students just love coming down and working with the kids. So I think there's, huge possibilities at Pitt. The question is, what do we want to do with Pitt? And I mean, I can bring the presence of the Carnegie Science Center. If there was a meeting that wanted to be called, I can get Jason Brown, the director, to call a meeting with the people at Pitt. Maybe that's not the meeting we want, but I think we need to decide somehow what's the best thing to do. So that's not something we're going to solve today. And I may have some thoughts, but my thoughts may not be the ones that are most effective. But certainly I think David and Jan, maybe Mark might have some ideas too as to how to organize this. But I think we need an organized approach to the problem.
So there is yet one gap in our discussion about how to connect with local universities. And it is the one of the Carnegie Mellon University. We did have someone from CMU lined up to be here, and she could not be here today, but she shared some information about CMU with us, which Chuck is going to share with all of you.
So CMU, I think the good Dr. Waldeck sort of alluded to this, is kind of disorganized when it comes to, I mean, Pitt seems to be really well organized. Pitt, CMU doesn't take a lot of high school students, certainly not in proportion to their standing in the world. And I, you know, there are faculty there. Well, excuse me. There are some folks at CMU who think that high school students have no place on campus. There are others like Judy Hallinan, and I think some of you may know Judy Hallinan, who think, yeah, whose job is to outreach to the community and to teachers, and you may have taken some programs with Judy, who want to see CMU. CMU definitely is not well organized for this yet, and I need to have some discussions with Judy about what she wants to do, what I can do to be helpful to her, or what any of us can do to be helpful to her. I would think that in, you know, obviously, let's assume normal times, you know, because, you know, not much is happening now, but you might do the same thing that you would do. You go to the websites, you know, and look at the research, find a faculty member who you think, who's doing the kind of thing your student wants to do, and then be in touch with that faculty member. But I would also suggest that you be in touch with Judy Hallinan. Now, Judy, this is her thing. She does not like, I don't want to say it this way, maybe that doesn't sound right. She doesn't like talking to teachers. She wants to hear from a student that this student is interested and dedicated, and you know, you might make an introduction to Judy, but Judy's going to want to talk with your student. So you may, and I think the thing to do would be to find a faculty member or faculty members at CMU, if you have students who are interested in CMU, and reach out to them. And when they tell you, oh no, I can't because we're not allowed to, you can take that back to Judy and have her talk with the faculty member. And you know, it's gonna be a multi-step process. So so that's kind of where we are right now. Judy's the gateway. You know, actually you have to recruit the individual faculty members, but Judy is the gateway. They don't really have any other programs. There are no Davids or anybody at CMU that I'm aware of. The only people who have those kinds of people like Mark Krotek, and I think those are super secret relationships developed over many, many years. But I think, you know, Judy's in the center of this, and we need to, I will, and we will all continue to encourage Judy to try to move the ball forward. You know, CMU might be a situation where we need to get some more formal. I've talked to a couple of people at CMU already about this problem. Maybe a place where we need to do some more. But that would be the thing. Website, faculty member, Judy, and there might then be a cyclic process until we get some satisfaction. A side issue here. I know, David, you talked about emails. I'm a little more old-fashioned than you, but I would say, you know, the formal written letter sometimes gets attention from folks, especially maybe somebody who's not 23 years old, if you're writing to a senior faculty member. I know this because I try to get people's attention all the time. And sometimes, you know, sending those emails, everybody ignores them. And then you get a letter. It's like, oh. And then I get a call from a secretary. Oh, Dr. So-and-so didn't realize you were trying to get hold of him. When, you know, we can arrange a phone call, or I can arrange a meeting. That sometimes works. I think phone calls are not bad either, because emails are very easy to ignore. Phone calls and letters are less easy. Can't put on somebody's doorstep is really, but I'm not recommending that. You know, it's very easy psychologically though to brush someone aside, you know, from an email. The closer you get to having a real person, that's why Zoom is in some sense good, because you got to look the person in the face and say no, you know, if they're asking you for something, and that's a little harder. Not as hard as it is when you're in person there, but so that's just my 2 cents on communication, because you know, that's I do a lot of that and try to get people's attention. Have done that for a long time, and I think some of those things, some of those older methods still work.